Hey folks, David Stewart here. Time for a very short, hopefully short, movie review. The Batman, starring Robert Pattinson. This is a movie that generated a couple memes. I don't think it's particularly bad, but it's not very good either. There are some things that really hold it back from being good, so I wanted to do this analysis and review to talk about the big things about what I think hold it back. I will have a written review on my Substack, link down below, so you can check that out. It'll cover probably some different things from this video. So the big thing about this movie is that it is too long. And it's too long really because it is a mystery thriller with Batman characters pasted over it, pasted into it. And because you have to have these Batman characters into it, we end up with like an entire subplot that's really unnecessary and adds a whole lot to the runtime. I think this movie was around 3 hours long, and it feels too long, especially for the main plot that we're focusing on with trying to catch the Riddler as he's like murdering people and threatening to destroy the city eventually and do that kind of stuff. That part of the plot starts to feel unexciting because we're going on too many detours with especially a subplot with Catwoman. And all of these characters, if you were to strip them out, you'd have a pretty basic like psychological mystery crime thriller. And if you were to have that, you would quickly want to edit out the romance subplot because it just doesn't do anything to move the main plot forward, and it takes up a whole lot of runtime. It would have been edited a lot more tightly, but because it's a Batman movie, there's a need to include all of these Batman characters, and a lot of them are there kind of like, hey, you know this character, this is the Penguin, this guy's Oswald, he's the Penguin, and here's the Catwoman, you know Catwoman, right? So you include these Batman characters almost out of an obligation because the fact is this movie exists as part of this canon of Batman media, Batman movies and Batman series and Batman comics going way back. And it exists in reference to them and also in opposition to them. Like it's going to try to have its own identity that's separate from these other Batman movies. And to some extent it does accomplish that, but it's always referencing Batman media. Through everything that it does. Everything that's kind of put into the movie is there because it's a Batman movie. So the big problem, it being 3 hours long, could have been solved by cutting out the main subplot. If you were to cut Catwoman out of the movie, you would have solved all of the pacing issues, in my opinion, and I don't think you would have lost anything in terms of the main plot. The B story of Catwoman really doesn't inform the A story of the Riddler, Catch the Riddler, really at all. And that's my big criticism. There are other things to like about the movie. I think it does have its own visual style that's a little bit different from, say, the Nolan verse. But at the same time, its visual style is very trapped in the ultra dark Batman approach that we've had really since Tim Burton. And while Tim Burton and the movies that followed Tim Burton, those first like 4 or 5 Batman movies, like up through George Clooney, I don't remember who did it last, before they took a break from Batman for a while. Those are very mythological. Batman is a superhero. He's not getting beat up all the time. He doesn't have deep personal struggles other than the ones which inform his character in general, like, the tragedy of seeing his parents get murdered or whatever. The villains are very larger than life villains. People laugh at Mr. Freeze, but he's a comic book villain, right? The Joker is very well done. He's better done than Mr. Freeze, I suppose, but he's really kind of a mythological beast. He's a beast of chaos that the superhero must slay. So they're very much in a mythological mode. Tim Burton, when he introduces Batman, it's in a mysterious way. He's bigger and more powerful and invincible to the criminals that are trying to shoot him and trying to kill him. And so we're presented with the Batman not as a human being with struggles and being beat up and ground down, but as a superhero. In this case, this movie exists in the post-Nolan Batverse, I guess, where it could be put anywhere in there, right? Batman he's very ground down. He's very psychologically beaten up. He's physically beaten up a lot in this movie. Gotham City is extremely dark. It's ridden with crime. It's dirty. All the characters are very dark and worn down by life. They have very adult concerns and adult backstories, some of which maybe are not even appropriate to talk about on YouTube, especially with like the Catwoman backstories. And the word that I would use to describe this, I'm going to lift this from Chris Straub. It's prurient. It's overly obsessed with being adult. And that prurience is best felt as this dissonance between we're being very serious in this attempt to have this extremely serious tone and this noir look to it, which it achieves, I think, moderately well. I think it does have a visual style, noir style, that I think works. But that's in contrast to a guy in a cape running around beating up bad guys with his fists. Right? You understand that. As soon as you put people in silly costumes, you're going to have any kind of dissonance with really super gritty adult stuff. And if you're wondering where this comes from, I'm stealing that word from Chris Straub because he used it to describe comics and DC Comics in a YouTube short here on YouTube. He's a comic artist, like a comic strip artist, among other things. And so he had this whole thing, the new 52. It's a gritty in-universe reimagining. It's like, wait. If I buy this comic for my kid, is he going to get to read an adventure? Batman was busy he's on the roof with a sniper rifle, getting it on with Harley Quinn. It's like this obsession with being adult. Because what happened was, just to talk about the meta a little bit, Gen X grew up and was still interested in comic books. But there was no younger generation that was buying comic books after about 1997. 1997 was a big year in comics. You had major bankruptcies, especially of Marvel, that changed the industry. And so you have a movement from primarily a young consumer base, like in the 80s, to an adult consumer base in the late 90s and the 2000s that wanted adult stories. Even though the adult stories really go way back, right? There's adult-oriented stories like the original Dark Knight saga. I think that's late 80s. So they go further back than that, but that's where the fandom became really obsessed with. It's got to be very adult and tackle modern issues and be political and stuff because the kids aren't reading the comics. And so this kind of spills over into the way the movies are. Christopher Nolan did a really excellent trilogy that was a lot more gritty and a lot more realistic. Instead of the Batmobile being a fantastical jet-powered machine, mythological, it's more realistic. But I think those movies in general are still more or less in the mythological mode, despite their very good execution and their higher degree of realism than other movies that have come before them. Because the villains are very larger than life, right? The villains are more like monsters. You have the Joker really is a monstrous character. Bane is a monstrous character. Ra's al Ghul is like, a more mythological kind of villain. So it's really about the man versus the dragon, if you were to think about it in large storytelling terms. We lose this with this one. In this one, it's a crime thriller that just has Batman characters. So it loses that mythological layer, and so it just feels silly. It feels silly to see Batman hopping around and beating guys up. And the tone that they tried to pursue where Batman is in more mortal danger, I think it works, but it is in dissonance to the fact that you have a guy in a costume running around. And the police don't really like him either, too. That's a funny thing that's been there in various forms of the media. So it's always in reference to Batman and trying to have its own identity. The music is effective. It works. It's not really memorable to me. Other people may have found it more memorable, but it really works in conjunction with the visuals of the film to, heighten all the emotional impacts of all the cues. So it does all the cue moments correctly. So technically that's well done. The visuals are well done. The movie is well shot. Edited, I don't know, because it's just too long. But that's more like what parts of the story are you really going to cut out? Not like how are you editing the action sequences together. Mostly, I think the editing was good for what you see on the screen. So it's technically a fairly well done movie. The problem is deeper on the structural level and on the mood that you get from the movie. It feels like it really wants to be part of like the Nolan verse in terms of its tone, but it just doesn't execute as well as Christopher Nolan did with those movies. It's not nearly as exciting because it's too long and because it has those subplots. It is like a noir crime thriller, but Batman. And that could be really good, but it just wasn't. It just didn't get fully pulled off the way that I view it. So there's some other funny things in there too, where like the Riddler got his social media followers to try to do a political assassination and like a massacre, and he had like 500 followers, which I thought was really funny. It was just this funny detail that's like, Did the writers think 500 followers was a lot of followers on social media? Like 500 ride or die followers. Like how did the Riddler cultivate these guys? But they felt like they needed to have social media in there, but it also felt like they didn't really know that much about followers on social media, or like how do people have followers, because like the really fringe the politically fringe people with the ride or die followers have like 500,000. It's not 500. And they're not sending anyone to do any kind of political massacres or assassinations. Rather, this movie was made before 2024. It's really the mainstream media that I think encourages people to do that. Not like randos on social media. It just felt really disconnected. Like somebody who has a job in Hollywood and doesn't have to worry about social media decided to put social media in as part of this chaotic evil character. It's like, it's just funny details that stick out. It's kind of like, it's one of those things that breaks. I don't know. There's not a whole lot of realism in this movie. It's a superhero movie, but that's one of those details that stuck out with me. So that's my opinion. I think if they cut Catwoman, you would have had a much more reasonable runtime, as well as just a much tighter movie that would have been a lot more exciting to watch and would have still fit with what they were going for, this kind of noir crime thriller, but with Batman. And they could have kept the Penguin in there, because I guess they have a Penguin show. I haven't watched it. So I will say, supposedly Colin Farrell was the Penguin. He was like unrecognizable, but he did a good job. There is some good acting in here. Andy Serkis is in it, and he does a really good job. There's generally, the acting's okay. I would say Robert Pattinson's a little flat, but his performance doesn't hold the movie back. Really, I would say, I don't remember the name of the actress who does Catwoman, but I don't feel like she's particularly strong. But anyway, nothing was like that bad. It's just the structure of it was not that good. And because it's a Batman movie, that kind of disturbs its ability to have its own identity in a way. So anyway, leave me your thoughts down below. I'd love to read them, and I will talk to you next time. Have a great day.